And according to my math, we are now live. Thank you very much. 60 people already here. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to do these probably not every day, but maybe every other day. So I think I did one on Tuesday. I'm doing one today on a Thursday. My math is right. You know, these things all blend together during these trying times. And so due to recent events in the news, and again, we do not use the C word, due to recent events in the news, we will be doing more live streams because, frankly, what else we got to do, right? Chevy Mustang points out that $1.78 for a gallon of gasoline in mid-Michigan. I saw on the intranet that it's below $1 a gallon in some places. Has a lot to do, I suspect, with local gas taxes. So there's that. Couple other things, and again, I'm glad you're all checking in, Bob, blah, blah. And now here's Steve. Thank you, sir, for checking in. And, of course, Rafi Chameleon says maybe we should make our own hand sanitizer. There you go. And especially if you can make it out of gasoline, you know. People have asked me, there's a new addition on the set, another cavalry saber. I've got a video coming out about that shortly, so we won't get into that today, but just want to point that out to you. I also did add Lionel Hutz back here, but I realize there's a glare on him, so I'll move him around. I'll try to get Lionel into a place that's more prominent. Johan Fischer checking in from Sweden. Thank you for checking in. I appreciate that. Moose Bullwinkle, gasoline still $3 in Nevada? Somebody's robbing you. That's not right. I saw it at $1.89 like 5 days ago here in Michigan. So Doug Jones, stay safe from Markham, Canada. Thank you, sir. And Doug, thank you for passing along the stories. You sent along quite a few to me lately that I've been interested in. I think I've even used a couple. I appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, I do encourage you to send me story ideas. If you see something in the news I haven't talked about yet, feel free to pass the links to me via email, and I'll check them out. Daniel Newman says, were you a Dave Marcus fan? Go 71. The 71 behind me, though, is driven by Bobby Isaac. And when Bobby Isaac left the K&K Racing team in, I think, 1973, he was replaced by Dave Marcus at one point. Dave Marcus was a good guy, but Bobby was my hero. I've written quite a bit about Bobby Isaac. So there you go. We're now over 200 in the room. So that's good. We did hit 500 on Tuesday. So I think 500 on a weekday is doing pretty good. Kit Marlowe, Scott 2, gas at $1.88 in Virginia. That sounds good. Elwin Break. Hello, Steve. Hello, Elwin. Sammy Johnson. Hi, Steve. Sent your last video to my senior dad. And that's what I'm really getting at, is we all know there's somebody in our lives that is the person who's most likely to get freaked out when they hear a piece of news. And it's not everybody, but the scammers get away with it and they make money because they find that 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 terms of people that they can hit. Zoltan, 200 in a room. Everybody catch the C word or recent events in the news. I'm trying to get that phrase to catch on. Don't call it the C word. Call it recent events in the news, because it pretty much covers everything. Cheryl Jeeper Miller checking in from Muskegon, Michigan. Muskegon over here, of course. Thank you very much for checking in. I lived in the west side of the state for a little while, a couple years ago, and got to know a lot more about the geography over there. I didn't know as much as I do now, so that's cool. BF Hammer, hello from Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. I'm quarantined from work for a minor head cold I barely feel. Yeah, better safe than sorry. I know I've heard of a lot of people who get sent home because they show symptoms of something. In fact, you might recall I've got the subconjunctival hemorrhage in the eye. It's getting better, though. It's getting noticeably better, finally. But it has nothing to do. I will admit to you that the first thing I did when I got this is I Googled it and said, is this a symptom of recent events in the news? And it's not. So I've gone out to public. I had to go to the post office, for instance, and the postmaster, somebody I know at my P.O. box. And I said, by the way, this has nothing to do with recent events in the news. She goes, oh, that's good to know. So Jeff Krivia, hello from Lewiston, Michigan. Lewiston, Michigan. That's a small town for you. Ed Libertor, did the boss send you home because of your eye? I'm the boss, dude. I have several jobs. I'm an attorney. I make videos on YouTube, and I write books and other things. And I am my own boss in all three of those. Although I guess when I write a book and a publisher agrees to publish it, they become my boss on that book. But, I'm the one who chooses when to write a book or when not to write a book. So I've always considered myself to be self-employed for pretty much the last 30 years almost. I did actually work for Jalopnik and RoadandTrack.com writing articles, but very, very loose rules, freelancing. They basically just said, hey, you know something? Write what you want, and we'll almost always publish it. QA Library, hi, Steve. Local fuel prices are total getting screwed due to dollars versus any other country's currency. But what's the price of gold doing? I don't think the price of gold's doing that much. I checked a couple days ago, and most of the precious metals, gold and silver, the two I always check, don't appear to be doing a whole lot. The primary thing, of course, with the fuel, and I mentioned this on Tuesday, is the price war, the battle for oil sales going on between Russia and Saudi Arabia, because Russia is not cooperating with OPEC. So that will trickle down to us, but of course it trickles down to us at a time when most of us aren't going anywhere. So Jonks Queen says, I have to keep reminding people my cough is from cannabis, not the other. Hey, and if it's legal or if it's medicinal, what's the difference? You're allowed to do that. Tall Think Ev, silver's down 25%. How is it possible? I always thought that precious metals in the markets were like this. When one went this way, the other one went this way. No? Okay, I could be wrong. The Great American, does the 10th Amendment protect businesses from government telling them to shut down? Well, the interesting thing is the 10th Amendment is the one that basically says anything that we did not reserve here is left to the states. So if anything, I would think the 10th Amendment would say the feds might not be able to shut you down, but the states can. So that's a real tricky question. We have a lot of questions popping up due to recent events in the news. And one of the things that keeps popping up over and over again is, can the state or the federal government or even a local government like New York City or San Francisco actually order you to do things like stay indoors or, quarantine or something? And the real bigger question, as I've mentioned before, is a more of a practical one, meaning that if you were to fight that, you'd have to file a lawsuit and then take it all the way up. And by the time you take it all the way up, the situation's over. And that's what a lot of governments really rely upon in emergency situations. Famously, Abraham Lincoln, suspended habeas corpus for a time during the Civil War. And of course, if they took that up, a Supreme Court might look at that and go, gee, I don't know, habeas corpus is kind of like in the Constitution. But then the question becomes, as a war measure or as an emergency measure, balance that out. But the point is that by the time you get it there, the emergency is usually over. And again, this is a hand motion for Supreme Court, too late. That's my version of ASL. Calvin Walker, is price gouging on Amazon or eBay illegal? It's interesting because arguably it would be, depending on the state you're in. But the problem, of course, is that twofold. One of those is that a lot of times those sellers are doing it, they sell it, they move on, or they are doing it for items that may or may not be listed for a long period of time. But I do know that Amazon and eBay both claimed they were going to crack down on price gougers. And I know at one point in time, Amazon said they removed something like 1 million listings based on what he thinks, based on what they thought price gouging was in terms of a definition. And I'm sure they basically said, let's compare what the price was before to what it is now. And if it's too much of a steep climb, we'll do it that way and call it price gouging. So I know they're trying to do that. So Aaron McWhirter, Steve, we appreciate all the funny moments. The question is, does that pretty much just involve the entire video or just portions of it? Or the question is, if it's the portions, are they the same portions I'm intending to be funny? So Bad drivers of North Texas. Is the government telling people to not go to church a violation of church and state in the First Amendment? And that's a good question, because the government's not supposed to prohibit any religious worship as part of the First Amendment. And so to tell them not to go to church could be interpreted that way. But I also do know that many of the churches have the ability to put their sermons online. And, I have a real mixed feeling about that, because I'm one of the people who actually believes that recent events in the news are true, in that there's a reason that we're doing all of this. And so the idea that a group of people could choose to go and do something that will wind up endangering everyone in the community. Look at the spring breakers in Florida, crazy stuff. So, Aaron McWhirter, we are on the USS Comfort. So in all videos, audience of 30 so far. Okay. Kit Marlowe, Scott, I'll get it eventually. Sorry. I do wonder if funerals will be banned like in Italy. I think even priests have been arrested for presiding over funerals. I do know, I saw the video this morning. It was on several different news organizations where they showed a funeral procession in essence, but it was actually just trucks moving caskets. They had so many people die over there in such a short period of time that it's overwhelming different like funeral industries and so on. And so they're being, forced to do these things en masse. And as you can imagine, if we've banned gatherings of a certain size, a funeral that's traditionally held with a lot of people at it would beat that. So, a lot of weird stuff's going on now. Weird and crazy times we live in. JP, howdy from my living room in Columbia, South Carolina. JP, thanks for checking in. JP, of course, and this is one of the last times I'll have to mention this, sent along the maple syrup from Canada, which started me thinking out loud about who makes the best maple syrup. And I'm waiting. Someone promised me one more thing of maple syrup, which will give me an even 5 samples to try. And I will do a blind maple syrup taste off, and we'll settle it once and for all. So, Edwin Vega, ammo is selling out as soon as it's on the shelves. Yeah, people are hoarding all kinds of crazy stuff. Toilet paper, paper towels, hand sanitizer, ammunition. David Alexi says, hey, Steve, my name is Dave. Love the show. Thank you. I'm glad you checked in. We're over 400 in the room now. So there you go. I'm not wearing masks and gloves because I am right now alone in the building, as I like to say. I can do anything I want. No one cares. No one can hear me. Except for you, of course. So there you go. Let me catch back up here. Ray Huck says 3 swords. Yes, there are now 3 swords on set. I mentioned at the top that this is my personal saber. This is the saber that belonged to Dr. Bowers. And this saber is a recent addition that was bestowed upon the collection recently. I've got a video. It'll go up tomorrow and explain the whole story. So there we go. Pissed off handicap guy. Do I have the right to peaceable assemble? Peaceable assembly is one of those things that's guaranteed. I think it's the First Amendment. And yes, you've got that right. The question is, do you have a right to peaceably assemble over a certain size of assembly when the restrictions placed on you are not political in nature and appear to be safety related? So it's kind of like if I wanted to, let me think of an example that won't get me in trouble with the powers that be. There are restrictions that are legal. They are allowed to put restrictions on some of your constitutional rights. So the question simply becomes, how severe is the harm they're trying to prevent? Does the restriction address that harm? And do those things make sense in the grander scheme of things? And so, this is a huge gray area right now. Mr. R, what pinpoint metal detector do you recommend? There's a small orange one. I think Garrett's makes it that I use. It's a handheld. It's waterproof. It's got a button on the side and a black prong, and you stick it in the hole. White's made pinpointers a couple. They have a thing called a bullseye, which I've used before. But the Garrett is one I like a lot. It also has a vibrate feature. It has a light that illuminates the hole. And it's something that I've used and had a lot of good luck with, so I like that. You have to have a pinpointer to metal detect. Nowadays, the detectors being able to get 8 inches down, to dig a hole 8 inches down and get dirt out, instead of picking a detector up and re-sweeping the hole and then re-sweeping this, you can just take the pinpointer and very, very quickly find out what's down there. So, Maurice, can the cops pull you over if a city implements at-night curfew? Is that detainment? Well, yeah, it's detainment. And it's just a question of, I mean, if they make it a law, they can get you for violating the law. Then you have to fight and say whether or not the law is correct or not. I've not heard of that happening yet. I've not spoken to anybody who's been pulled over and said, hey, a cop pulled me over and harassed me for being out past curfew. But then again, we don't have curfews yet in Michigan. So I like to talk about things that I've experienced or heard about firsthand. Let's see here. Jeff Tullius sitting in the backyard with the dogs, enjoying the heat and sun. Well, you're not in Michigan. It's a little chilly outside. I'm guessing 50-ish, maybe. And I've mentioned before, if it breaks 50, I'll go for a run. If it doesn't break 50, I do the Peloton. So I did the Peloton this morning, but if it breaks 50 this afternoon, I'll go for a run. It would be my second or third run of the year. I need to get out and run more often, but I wait till it warms up before I start doing that on a regular basis. Bob Bong. Hey, Steve, I got a scam call yesterday. Anyway, it would be okay after the stream to call you. Yeah, go right ahead, call my office. I got to tell you, I got one as I was sitting here literally watching the clock count down. I got an email and I got my phone here, but I got the sound turned off to keep it from interrupting our important business. But I got an email and, another one literally just came in. The Warren Buffett Foundation picked you for a $1.5 million donation. Reply for details. Yeah, I bet they did. Second, contact eBay. This is a message from eBay. And it's got a bunch of gibberish to make it look like it's a ticket code. And it goes, suspension notice. Hi. Due to inactivity or incorrect user information, we had to limit your eBay activity. Click here to activate. And of course, if you click there, it's going to say, like, what's your mother's maiden name? What's your PIN number? What's your bank information? And of course, the return address is not even from eBay. So, but people get these and, they must, send out 1 million of them. And if 1% of 1% people fall for them, they make money off of them. I could do the math on what 1% of 1% of 1 million is, but it sounds complicated. Mega Eddie Max, Steve, I enjoy your content here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Thank you. I've never been to Louisiana. I got to get down there. Baton Rouge, New Orleans, one of these days. Have not done that yet. Kelvin Walker. Oh no, I did not click. I simply read it and deleted it. The finger motion I made was the delete motion. Ghost Shadow had to go to the base hospital on Tuesday, had armed guards blocking entrances to the base hospital, had to go to another location and pass a health check before being allowed in the parking lot. Yeah, that's the crazy thing when you go someplace like the hospital where normally you can run into a hospital and I need help. Not anymore. You got to get past guards and all kinds of stuff. So science fiction, Steve, what are those two new flags? The flags up here were sent to me by a very generous viewer who also sent me the Viper. That's a Viper That's a Viper GTS coupe from the second generation, which is the generation I want to get. And he passed along to me a Michigan State flag, which is the blue flag, and then the flag of the county of Hampshire, which is where he lives in England. So the Michigan flag was sent to me from a viewer in England. So that's how interconnected this whole world is. By the way, we just hit 500 people in the room. We're 20 minutes into the feed, so I appreciate that. Did you get tested for the flu, Lynn H? No, I did not. I'm not displaying any symptoms. My understanding is that if you go someplace and ask to be tested, they'll say, we're not wasting tests on people like you. You're not a basketball player or a politician. If you're a basketball player, they'll test you right away. Apparently, it has to do with a direct proportion of how much money you have. Money and the ability to persuade, how much power you have. The great American, you're doing big things, Steve. Thank you. Lisa B. Funny thing, I was in a store that was just about wiped out of stuff, and I noticed how dirty the empty shelves were. They could use a cleaning. That would be a good idea. The supermarkets ought to take this opportunity while the shelves are empty to give them all a good once over, as we say. Why not? So MacGyver at large, basketball player or politician. Yeah, that's what I noticed, and I'm not the first to make that observation. I will tell you that we're very close to being at the end of civilization, because yesterday the attorney, the Surgeon General, apparently appealed to one of the Kardashians to please tell your fans to behave. And I thought to myself, I don't know if that's right how the org chart should be, where the Surgeon General asks a Kardashian to put a message out. And I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm saying there's something wrong with society. Lynn H., how many rolls of toilet paper do you have? I actually did take a glance in the cupboard the other day, and I won't say, for fear that the zombies might come and get me. The question is, do zombies need toilet paper? Because zombies do eat people, right? I don't watch The Walking Dead. I know people who do, and I've never gotten around to asking some of these more important questions. I know how vampires behave from watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I don't know how zombies behave because I don't watch The Walking Dead. So, Michael Smutnik, restaurants and bars could use a deep cleaning while they have no or fewer customers. You got that right, my friend. I watch Bar Rescue. I also watch a lot of Gordon Ramsay shows, and Hell's Kitchen, but also the one where he goes out and he rescues, 24 Hours to Hell and Back, where he rescues restaurants and remakes them. And and also Hotel Hell with the other guy, I forgot his name. But the one thing you learn from watching those shows is that 99% of all restaurants in America, if you did a surprise inspection of the kitchen, it would horrify you to where you'd want to swear off food. So I know they're only going to the worst ones of all, and they're playing it up for TV, but it's often bad. So yeah, they should use this opportunity with their downtime to clean their kitchens in particular. MacGyver at large, the zombies might not care about what's leaving so much as what's coming in. There you go. I'm sorry, I misread sometimes because the thing's going by so fast. Jagged Ice is yes, Buffy and Angel. Yeah, I watched Angel too, but Buffy was killer. I know people go, Steve, you're a grown man, and you had to have been a grown man watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, even if you watched it, originally, which I actually watched it in reruns. I was a late comer to Buffy. And the interesting thing is that Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon, the guy who wrote 99% of it was one guy's vision, and he kept it very, very good all the way through. And yeah, you got to buy into it a little bit, vampires. But the story was so good. The characters were so good. It was so consistently written. There are shows out there that you can watch. Like, even if you liked House in the first few seasons, it ran so far off the rails by the last few seasons that it's like, what's happening? And it's because they got different writers coming in and different ideas. And they're like, hey, we've already done everything. What else can we do? We've done everything, So believe it or not, I highly recommend Buffy the Vampire Slayer because it is a well-written show. Yes, it features teenagers who fight vampires, but it's a good show. Oh, boy. Michael Stevens, my favorite Buffy was the musical. Yes, Once More with Feeling. And again, if you don't watch the show, you can't comprehend this. But if you've watched the show, my understanding is they've actually taken that show out and they've toured it where they bring it to theaters and broadcast it. I meant to put it on the screen, and people come because they can sing along with it and goof off. But it's crazy. Johnny Knoxville, Steve, you should Peloton and do a live feed simultaneously. I could do that, but number one, I couldn't do a Peloton for an hour and a half. It would be a shorter ride. The only problem is I'd have to move all my equipment, and the Peloton is movable. It's not designed to be moved around a lot because it's got to be plugged into a wall for one thing, but it's kind of heavy. It's got wheels on it, but so I couldn't wheel it in here. I'd have to drag my camera out there. So that I won't be doing that anytime soon. So we'll see. Rafi, Buffy movie versus Buffy TV show. Something I'm not sure. I'm sure I've seen the movies, but they don't ring a bell. But I like the TV show just simply because they had a lot of good characters, a lot of good threads, and it was so well written. So yeah, Ghost Shadow, it won't fit behind the desk. No, it would not fit behind the desk. But I've thought about doing something where I can set my GoPros up very easily and shoot something while I'm on the Peloton, and it'd be kind of funny on some level, but it would probably come across as being horribly self-indulgent. So we'll see. Ray the Mailman, delivering the mail in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Thanks for live stream. Something good to listen to. Thank you. Hey, thank you, my friend. Like I said, there are some jobs where people cannot, Felix, I'll say it in a second. There's some jobs out there where people cannot stay home. The police, the fire department, doctors, medical professionals, and mailmen, and UPS drivers, and FedEx drivers. I mean, we've ground to a halt, but you ain't seen the halt we'd grind to if the mail stopped. And that is a very serious thing. I don't care what you say about the electronics and the email and all that stuff, but that would be the end, so we got to keep that going. Felix asked about the new sword. This is simply another sword that has been conveyed to me by somebody. I'm going to do a separate video about it. But as of right now, I've got 3 swords on the set. The one I bought myself, the one that belonged to the World War I surgeon, and then this one here, which is post-Civil War. So I will do a video and explain that. But my sword collection is growing, which is something I never thought would happen. But then again, people send me all kinds of stuff. Hey, I got to tell you, somebody sent me a gift, and I appreciate this. And it's not going to be as visual as you might think based on the fact that it doesn't work vertically. But Jerry sent me a note and said, Steve, enjoy the gift. And the gift is a spinner. And it sits on a desk. It's actually very, very high quality, very heavy. And it's got bearings in it. And you spin it, and there's a pointer on it, a little red dot. And it is a lawyer's legal decision maker. And so what you do is you put it on your desk, and you spin it, and like a magic 8-ball, it will stop, and it'll tell you that your next decision should involve plea bargain. There you go. So thank you very much, Jerry. I appreciate that for the legal decision maker. And I also briefly mentioned the other day we were talking about Bigfoot, and I have now gotten very angry emails from guys who like Bigfoot. Not talking about Bigfoot here, but and I mentioned, somebody said, well, what about the coelacanth, the fish that they thought had gone extinct, and they found them around, and boom, 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 boom. And I said, I've got a book on that right around here somewhere. I mistakenly said it was a fish out of time. It's called A Fish Caught in Time. And it's by Samantha Weinberg, and it's called The Search for the Coelacanth. Although I had several people correct me and say it's coelacanth, but we won't go there. But this is a wonderful, wonderful book. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, it's a cross between a biology book and a history book and a mystery book. And somebody actually said, reads like some classic Spielberg creation. Indiana Jones let loose in a real life Jurassic Park. And that's actually not a bad description of it. And Simon Winchester, who wrote The Professor and the Madman, said it's a marvelous tale, told with elegance and style. I read this book in a single setting, moved and informed both by what she had to tell and how she told it. And that is good praise coming from a guy who writes great books. So it's a very, very cool book. So if you're interested in the search for the prehistoric and previously thought to be extinct, but not, coelacanth, That's the book to check out. Johnny Knoxville points out that we've got invasive Asian carp in the Great Lakes. I'm surprised we're not calling them Chinese carp yet. But the sad part is that the Asian carp were brought to America to be raised on carp farms. I'm not sure who wants to eat Asian carp, but apparently there's a market for it. And then somehow some of them got out. And it turns out that they reproduce like rabbits on speed, and they have no natural predators because they're from Asia. And these things are just spreading like a plague. And they've made it all the way up the Mississippi River. I'm not sure if they've gotten into the Great Lakes yet, but I know they're worried about it. And once they get in the Great Lakes, it's going to wreak havoc on the fisheries there, which is sad. So, odd job. Nice to see you, Steve. Pleasant surprise. Thank you. I've mentioned at the top, I'll probably be doing these every other day. So I'll do it Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. We'll see, as long as we're on lockdown. Johnny Knoxville, the Wuhan Carp. Isn't that the name of a rap group? Oh, that'd be the Wu-Tang Carp. Oh, boy. Dankiest Dada, with the money the government is giving out, is that for everyone or just working Americans? You know, it's kind of funny. I've heard several different variations of this. I've heard that they're going to give it to all working age people, meaning that if you're 18 and above, maybe you get a check. But then again, like, what if you were unemployed, or what if you're retired? I mean, what if you're unemployed before this thing hit? You know, what if you just didn't feel like working? You know, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because no matter how you slice it, they're going to wind up giving it to either people we don't think deserve it, or not to people who do. So, How Hing Pao, aren't zebra mussels already all over Lake Erie? Oh yeah, no, the zebra mussels, they have not made it into Lake Superior, I don't think, and I think that they speculate that's because of the temperature of the water. But they are in Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, and Lake Erie, and I'm sure they're in Lake Ontario also, but I'm just speculating, because I know that they came up the St. Lawrence Seaway, probably in the ballast of an ocean-going freighter. And so a freighter could start out in, like, say, China with a load of something that's going to Duluth, speak of the devil, and it would, cross the oceans, come up the St. Lawrence Seaway, go through a bunch of, locks, including the Sioux locks, and wind up in Lake Superior. And somewhere along the line, it may have to dump its ballast as it transfers from saltwater into freshwater. So, and the ballast, if it got picked up on the other side of the planet, might bring something weird with it. And zebra mussels are merely one of the things that have been brought over in the ballast of freighters that came from far, far away. So, Anonymous says they've said it would be given to households, which leaves out the people who need it the most, homeless. Well, I'm not sure about that. I've never seen households in any of the articles I read that appear to be coming from good sources. But it's also possible that who knows? They'll iron it out. Sean Oakley, how do I get my check? There'll be news. Trust me, people will be talking, and then they're probably going to. The government's done handouts before. Remember the $400 handout we got a while back? They did it the same way they did tax refunds. So if you got a deposit, they just deposited it that way. I don't know. They were probably have to mail out a bunch of checks too. So we'll see. Mickey McNicholas, why don't you have donations turned on for your chat? Number one, I'm not even sure how that works. But number two, I Bob Bong, he's a lawyer. He don't need your pennies. Well, it's one of those things I've said before. I'm happy that people show up and watch. There are commercials, on my videos, and so I'm making some money that way. But I'm not going to turn on a Patreon account or a super chat account or anything. I just don't. I don't want to sit here and shill for money. We'll just have a nice talk here, and I'll try to answer the questions that catch my attention. So, yeah, Rafi says those Bush's tax cuts paid out checks back in the day. Yeah, but I think I heard from some people who said they got direct deposit of that too. So you never know. Brianna CC, my last stimulus check was $600 from the Bush administration. Yeah, it's the stimulus checks that we were talking about back then. D-Rock, hey Steve. Hey D-Rock, are you related to Key Rock, the unfrozen caveman lawyer? Because I don't understand your airplanes, your fax machines, or even what these sounds are when these cars make noise at each other. But I do know that my client is entitled to $3.9 million in compensatory damages and $2.5 million in punitive damages. Rick Fletcher, hello from Louisiana. Thanks for checking in. Someone else checked in from Baton Rouge not too long ago. Daryl Ross, I read the checks will be for U.S. citizens only. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case. I can't imagine they're going to give them to people in other countries. Maybe we should have a stimulus and give checks to people in Canada and Finland. I got friends in both places. Johnny Knoxville, I'm buying a new toupee with my government check. I would too, but the toupees I buy cost more than $1,000. It's the tactical toupee. They cost more money. Okay. If you get what you pay for. Okay. If you buy a $200 toupee, it's going to be made out of like fiberglass and other stuff, and it won't wash well. So Brianna CC, it's unethical for lawyers to take donations. Interesting point. I'm not sure about that. Generally speaking, if I charge you money, I've got to tell you what I'm going to do with the money. But Paul Fix, how do you prove need? My understanding is it's not going to be a needs-based money handout. My understanding is they're just basically going to take a income threshold and say everyone below this threshold gets it. So we'll see. Chase MC69, have you heard of the Earn It bill? No, I have not. I've heard several people talk about that, but I've not taken a look at it yet. Eleanor's Viva Fry takes donations. That's possible. There's a couple of different business models you can do on the internet, on YouTube in particular. And Cliff Hartle just said it. Leonard has Patreon. And Leonard, by the way, I'm going to do a video with Leonard one of these days. We're just trying to work our schedules out. But Leonard decided to not do the commercial advertising route, but just simply go the Patreon account route, and it works for him. So everybody does it slightly differently. Lynn H., would you buy anything from the Wuhan market? I saw some of the things they were selling there, and I thought to myself, who would eat that? But unfortunately, other cultures have different norms for what they eat and what they'll buy in an open marketplace. So, Brett D., have you ever gone to visit your Finnish roots? If so, what area would you recommend? I've never been to Finland, my friend. That's sad but true. There's several people in the chat right now in Finland. But my parents have been back many times, and I've had other relatives go back, aunts and uncles and so on. And I've heard it's beautiful, typical European country with hundreds and hundreds of years of history. But I've not been back myself. So when I do go back, the first time in particular, I'll have to go back and check all the touristy stuff, which is pretty much going to be, I suspect, Helsinki, which is where all the big stuff is. So, William Burnett, how about retired people? I believe that they're not going to base it on whether or not you're employed so much as it's your income, because retired people obviously do have some income coming in from somewhere, presumably, or at least many of them do. And so, this economy is hitting them as well. So I suspect that retired people will get it as long as they're below that top threshold. 5153 Flash, are the courts shut down? They are now, about 99%, meaning that you can get emergency stuff done in court. But if you file a lawsuit and just go, hey, I want to sue my neighbor for something, they're going to say, file your complaint. We'll see you in 6 months. Literally, there's nothing but emergency stuff. I drove by the Oakland County Circuit Court yesterday. There was a couple cars in the parking lot. It looked like a holiday as far as that goes. Nico Pasala, Finland, checking in. Thank you for checking in, Nicola. And again, like I said, I've got quite a few people, disproportionate number of people from Finland who watch my channel specifically because they see my last name. So There was also a race car driver named J.J. Leto, who was Finnish, of course, along with a few other, especially in Formula One, a couple F1 drivers who are Finnish. Damiana Scoresborn, I could be mispronouncing that. And the word she's written in types, or the word that follows there in all caps, I believe would be an exclamation in Finnish that might be considered obscene. But I don't know how obscene, just kind of a curse word of sorts. Cyberdoc, they're making tactical toilet paper you can use as a mask now. I've had several people tell me I should wear an eye patch to cover my recovering subconjunctival hemorrhage. And I said, I'll wear one as long as it's the tactical eye patch. And somebody sent me a link to some cool and stylish eye patches, but nobody sent me a link to an actual tactical eye patch. And that's crazy. It seems to me that there's got to be a need for tactical eye patches, the same as a need for tactical, which I'm pretty sure they make. Tactical socks, tactical belts. So, Ed Lambert just ran a search for me on the word pergola, and it says means evil spirit in Finnish and is a popular Finnish profanity. There you go. So, I'm not sure how profane it is, but I do know it's something that you might yell out as you hit your thumb with a hammer or something by accident. JP says that when Bush sent out money, I received some as well as a Canadian living in the U.S. without permanent residency. So I think we should all now take a closer look at JP, who's been hiding out in America specifically for the handouts. I was joking. Johnny Knoxville calling attention to the word burglarious. And burglarious, by the way, and Ian just asked, hey, Steve, hi from New Jersey. How long in are we? Well, I started at 1 o'clock Eastern, so we're in about 40 minutes. Johnny Knoxville calling out the word burglarious. Burglarious is the word that you get if you're trying to make an adjective out of the word burglar or burglary. And so a tool that's used by a burglar would be used burglariously. And every now and then I'll throw out a wacky word like that because it just the perfect one fits in my mind. The other day I used the word mulct, M-U-L-C-T. And it's not a common word, but it means to rip somebody off. There's two meanings for it. And the secondary meaning, which is becoming more common, means to rip somebody off. And so you could be mulcted. And I'm aware of the word because it was used in a very, very famous court case a few years ago. And so the other day I said, have you been mulcted out of money? And I had several people go, huh? And I was thinking what I should actually do at the end of a video is whenever I've used an unusual word, have a little vocabulary thing where I define it and say, mulcted, and then explain what the word is. So there you go. Voorhees Jason says, on the news, they said they're giving out $1,000 checks in April. And I've heard that it's going to be in a couple weeks. So I suspect that April's about right. JP says the verb is to burgle. Yes, burgle is the verb, burglar is a noun, and burglarious is the adjective. Past perfect superlative. No, I'm just making stuff up here. Bilked. Bilked's another good word. Bilked. So, Lynn H., when are the government checks being mailed out? Your guess is as good as ours. A couple weeks. It's like trying to make a verb out of the noun incentive. The verb is actually motivate, but you say incentivize, right? And a lot of words do that, where people will take a word and then put the suffix or prefix, or they'll extrapolate it somehow. And they'll often use the wrong rule to extrapolate it, and then it becomes used that way. And that's one of the ways that words evolve. So, the word incentivize is one of those ones that, I don't know if people said that 50 years ago or not, but it's certainly, I use it all the time now. Cyberdoc, I'm using burglariously. for the next 6 months every day. You should. Hornswoggled. Yeah, hornswoggled, bamboozled. There's a bunch of those kinds of words, almost like the type of words you expect some crusty old gold miner to yell out, either as he's being ripped off or as he's ripping off somebody. Curmudgeon. Frankenfood. Yeah, Franken's another one. Franken. The worst of them all is the suffix gate. Okay, Watergate, of course, was the name of a hotel in Washington, D.C. So Watergate became a scandal, and Watergate was all over the news for about 3 or 4 years. And then once that got done, they started tacking the word gate onto anything that was a scandal. So there's a scandal involving, a mouse. We'll call it Mousegate. Microphone gate. And it's just stupid. It's just stupid that the word, because Watergate was an actual word. The fact that they chopped one half of it off and said, no, this now means scandal. It's almost as if the original Watergate had something to do with water, which it didn't. It was a hotel. So, but it's funny how words evolve over time. Then is burgle a noun or a verb? Well, burgle is a verb. He burgled the house. And then I guess a burglar would be a noun. I don't know that there's actually a noun that, so Seagate, MH08. See, I can't say that. Recent events in the news, gate. Graham A. Johnson, a hotel. We base all of these suffixes on a hotel. Yes, that's the point. It's the Watergate Hotel. I believe it's still there. And for those of you who don't know, the Watergate Hotel was where the Democratic National Committee was headquartered in the lead up to the 1972 election. And one night, some burglars broke in and burgled the place in a burglarious fashion. And they got caught and they got arrested and they got put on trial. And it came out during all of this brouhaha that they were actually connected some way to the man who was President Richard Milhouse Nixon. And by the time the dust settled, Nixon was walking alone on a beach in San Clemente. Gerald R. Ford was president. Spiro T. Agnew had resigned the vice presidency in total shame. And the language now got the suffix gate to mean some kind of scandal. So a weird world we live in. Aaron B., it's a very nice hotel. Yeah, I'm surprised that they've kept the name. I mean, obviously the name is famous, but it does have negative connotations. But I've heard it's nice, Watergate Hotel. But I mean, they got to get that all the time. People go, Watergate? Really? James O'Malley is a Seagate, a gate to keep the sea out. And I suspect the Watergate at one point in time was a gate that, you raised it and water went and you lowered it and water stopped. John Michael Karma, the nabobs of negativism. Yes, the good old time. Back in the day when a politician could say something silly and people would be okay with it, but it didn't happen all that often. Yeah, the nattering nabobs of negativism. There you go. Graham A. Johnson, no such thing as bad press. That's probably what plays into it here. When people are searching hotels.com, looking for hotels in Washington, D.C., and the Watergate pops up, there are probably people who go, oh, I recognize that name. So, Clint Richardson, are you on Twitter? In theory, yes. I have a Twitter account. I post about every 3 days on it. And it's just Steve Leto, at Steve Leto. If you want to get more updated information on stuff I post, follow me on Facebook. And try not to bombard me with too much political stuff. Because I have over 1,000 followers on Facebook, 1,000 friends on Facebook. And as a result, my news feed is out of control. And sometimes I look at it and go, who are these people? Oh, wait. So, MacGyver at large gate valves are an actual piece of plumbing. Yeah, I assume that's a valve that can either stop or not stop something that's in a line, right? So Ephesians 5:1:1. Fake news gate. Yeah, and Robert Quinn asks the obvious question: if there's a scandal at the Watergate Hotel, would that be the Watergate gate? And or what if there's simply a scandal at the water department? Would that be another Watergate? So Johnny Knoxville, Steve, come back to posting on Instagram. I have an Instagram account, but I haven't posted on it in years. I don't like Instagram. I don't understand the idea that I can post photographs without links. So, Borked. Nigel Carruthers, how about Borked, Steve? For Supreme Court nominee Robert Bork. Yeah, it's actually very sad, and I hate to get into this. Bork starts out as a guy who had a funny name, Robert Bork. Genius, absolute genius. And he was on the Court of Appeals, I think in the Second Circuit. I could be wrong on that, but he's on the Court of Appeals. And he got nominated for the Supreme Court. And he got attacked in a way unlike anything, a coordinated attack politically, unlike anything I think any previous Supreme Court justice nominees had gone through. And they wound up basically destroying his character to the point where they withdrew his nomination. And it's crazy. And so they actually refer to what happened to him as being borked, because they now talk about, bork that nominee. And it's almost like the Swift boat campaign against John Kerry. Without getting political here, they ran ads with a bunch of guys going, I served with John Kerry and he's a coward. And the guys in the ads never served with John Kerry. They simply spent time in Vietnam at the same time, never met him, nothing. But the ads were very successful because most people don't stop to figure this stuff out. And so they refer to that as being swift boated. And the swift boat, of course, is the boat that very, very small boat that the Navy uses in rivers in Vietnam. And John Kerry served on a swift boat. And the guys they had running in the ads had also served on swift boats, just not with John Kerry. So they refer to that as being swift boated. So, those kinds of things come up out of the political spectrum as well. Johnny Knoxville, follow Leto's law on Snapface. Or TikTok or Vine. How about Vine? I'm thinking about getting into Vine. What do you think? That's an obscure joke. I'm not sure how long Vine's been out of business. Damiana Scourgeborn, would sovereign citizens qualify for the check? The interesting thing is that they would in theory. The question is, will they take it? And it's funny how people will immediately abandon all of their principles when it comes to somebody giving them money. JP, what the heck is Vine? You don't know? Johnny Knoxville, who remembers ICQ? Yeah, that was early. Vine was a platform where you could post short videos, and it took off, but its growth curve went like this and then like this. And what happened, I think, is that other platforms very quickly just said, "Oh, we'll let you post short videos." But for a brief period of time, I think it's like 10-second videos or less, you could post on a thing called Vine. And some guys became Vine stars because they got good at making these really, really short videos that go viral. So Paul Lemke, Gatorade. Yes, I'm drinking Gatorade today from my holiday time in Michigan glass because this is either the last day or second to last day of winter. Spring is just around the corner. So MySpace. Hey, MySpace is still there. Yeah, Rafi says that Vine had no way to monetize, which is a problem. For those of you who are curious, the $100 bill is there. I can see it right now. I can give you clues, but somebody will spot it. And someone spotted it. Jonathan M. says he spotted it, and he is correct. So there you go. TikTok is a modern. Yeah, there you go. Graham Johnson, and TikTok is the more recent one that's caught some traction. Let's see. Here we go. And people are checking in now, saying that once it's been pointed out to you, it's much easier to see. Boycott watch. You make videos from home daily. Do you ever go to your office? I've never answered this question definitively, and I will now because you guys are hanging out with me. We're over 500 in the room on a weekday. This set is in my house, okay? And so I have an office. I was actually at my office yesterday. I picked up the sword that was delivered by UPS yesterday. And so my law stuff I get done in an office. My videos I shoot at my house. And so one of the things that some people have noticed, and I try not to mention dates or times in videos, but quite often what I do is I shoot the videos the day before they go up. So I'm often sitting at my desk at 9 a.m. and I have a video about to go up, and I look at the video thing on YouTube, and a video is set to go live at 9, second video is set to go live at noon. And usually those are uploaded the day before. So my videos aren't as contemporaneous as they should be, but that explains it. Johnny Knoxville, Steve lives in a tiny house on wheels. No, it's a mobile home. It's a double wide and a slab. I've actually, in the early days of my law practice, I would handle a lot of different cases, not just lemon law stuff. And I actually had gotten calls from people who bought defective mobile homes. And I assume that many people ask and say, how do you know it's defective? Aren't they all like that? And the answer is yes, they pretty much are. So the real big question is if you buy a brand new one, what can you expect from it? That's the real question. By the way, I saw the funniest video on YouTube yesterday, and I'm wondering if I've never done this before, but I'll tell you right now. Hang on a second. Yes, it's a 2-minute long video, and I strongly urge you to Google the phrase cat, C-A-T, cat, next word hole, H-O-L-E, and the next word wall, W-A-L-L, okay? Some guy has a 2-minute video where he put a wall across an opening in a door, and he cut a circle and it has 12 inches around, so his cat can just walk through the hole. And then a few seconds later, he clips it, and now the hole is smaller, and the cat climbs through, and he keeps reducing it till the very last one. The cat's like jamming himself through it. At one point, he backs up and he takes a running start, and he gets like halfway through. Trust me. Cat hole wall. Google it. You'll thank me later. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen. When I see a video like that, I go, okay, that is why the internet was invented. Okay. This bit about ARPA and DARPA and trying to set up nodes on a computer so in case of a war, we don't lose our network. Nonsense. It was set up so you could watch 2-minute long funny cat videos. Alan Black, I see a Michigan flag. Yeah. By the way, I'm going to tell you. Hang on a second. Hang on. Put that right there. I've written books, including a book by about a guy named Douglas Houghton. And the Michigan flag is actually a very important and interesting thing, especially if you're into history in Michigan. So, for instance, I'll tell you the flag contains a lot of symbolism. It's extremely important. So across the top, it says E pluribus unum, which of course is Latin, out of many one, or one are many, many are one. And we of course have the eagle, which of course indicates an affiliation with the United States of America. And then we've got the elk and the moose, okay, who are standing upright on their hind legs like humans, just like they do in real life. And then, of course, it says here tubor on the shield. And tubor is Latin meaning I will defend, which, of course, is a strong concept, you know. And then across the bottom, it has our state logo in Latin, which says, in essence, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you, because Michigan is comprised of two peninsulas, the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. And then the joke, of course, is that there are 4 animals on the flag because you've got the moose, the elk, the eagle, and a human being right there. And that's a man who's waving. And he's got in his hand either, we don't know, it's either a walking stick or it could be a rifle, a musket. We're not sure. So, and then, of course, we got the lake, and we got the sunrise or the sunset, depends which side of the state you're on. And the cool thing, of course, is that the flag of Michigan is absolutely 100% plagiarized from the Hudson Bay Company's logo. So the Hudson Bay Company was a company that did fur trading in this area in the 16 and 1700s. So in 1835, when they sat down to put together the state seal and so on, somebody goes, oh, I kind of like the Hudson Bay Company's logo. Let's just use that. And instead, they changed this. On the Hudson Bay Company, it was a beaver, which makes more sense for Canada, but not the U.S. So we went with an eagle because an eagle, of course, is more fitting for an American company. But that's all the symbolism on the flag. And it's not uncommon that you'll see the flag incorporated into a state seal, and they'll often put across the bottom the Roman numerals 1835. And I like to tell people that 1835 is not the year that Michigan became a state. It's the year that we had our constitutional convention. But the problem, of course, is that we weren't allowed to become a state for 2 more years. So the state seal says 1835, whereas we became a state in 1837. So that's fun with flags for today. And I'll pretty that back up later on. There you go. John Michael Karma, Michigan, 1837. Yeah, that's the year we became a state. I believe it was September. Zaphod Beeblebrox, reducing hole for the cat. When will he stop? Just thinking about it. Seriously, watch the whole thing. It escalates. It starts out slow. You're going, where's this going? Cliff Hartle, the Hudson Bay Company is still around. Do they run like department stores or something? But yeah, a long time they've been around. Andrew Allen, Maine Bicentennial Day was last Sunday. What's really funny, I worked in radio in 1918. I worked in radio in 1987. And the funny thing is that 1987 was the 150th anniversary for the state of Michigan. And you might not know this, but 100 years is a centennial. 10 years is a decade. So what do you call 150 years? And of course, it's a sesquicentennial. I remember working on the radio. I was a disc jockey, but I had to read public service announcements and things. And for about 3 weeks, everything was the sesquicentennial this and the sesquicentennial that. I learned to say sesquicentennial as a result of that. So, Doug Jones, are you a Big Bang fan? Fun with flags. A little bit. I watched it when it first came out. I watched it for the first few seasons. I watched it in reruns for a while. But the last few seasons, it kind of got away from me. I lost interest. There's something about the show. It's like an obvious rhythm where it's like setup, joke, setup, joke. And after a while, it tired on my nerves. So Johnny Knoxville, Michigan's birthday is January 25th. Really? I always thought it was in September. I could be wrong on that. But I never actually celebrate the day, just the year. Lynn H., do you ever wax the cars in your bookcase? No, I dust them off from time to time. And by from time to time, I mean periodically at best. Some people think that I simply move them off the top shelf and they get too dusty to clean, but that's not true. Graham Johnson, Canada just had its sesquicentennial. Did you? There you go. So you know how to pronounce it too. Yeah. Bill Van Ram. Yeah. If you're homeschooling your children, put them in front of my live streams and tell them, hey, look, you're going to learn English, foreign languages, and history. And we might even slap in a little flag stuff. Dave H., Route 66 Viper Drive 2020. That sounds like an interesting idea. I've never done Route 66. I mean, I'm familiar with it. I've seen parts of it, never actually driven it. I understand it'd be a very, very cool thing to do. But I would that's an interesting idea. I'm hoping to get the Viper this year. I hope to bring it to Woodward Dream Cruise, and I probably will take some road trips with it. What better thing to do with the Viper than to take it out and drive it? So What would be your all-time favorite television show? Ooh, that's a tough call. I have to think about it. There's quite a few I like. But and we're talking about shows that are, like for instance, does Monty Python count as a TV show? I guess it does. The original does, right? That might be up there. I'll think of some more. Is the blue car a Viper? I missed when that went up. Yes. Blue car is a Viper, second generation, which is 1996, 2002. And this was donated by a viewer. And this is the one that's got the stripes on it. And of course, the hardtop. The RT10 Roadster was still available, but I want to get a hardtop one myself. And then, of course, it's got all the cool stuff like the moving parts. And you can see that neat V10 engine. Because heaven knows 8 cylinders just ain't always enough. So there we go. I got to be very careful on the edges here because I was rearranging the other day and I realized I have to hang the bumpers off the ends of the shelves. So Godless GLK, nice microphone collection. Are they arranged by year? No, they're actually arranged by height. And the one in the middle right there is actually probably the oldest one up there. It's not quite in the middle, but it's one of the two middle ones. But that's an old ribbon mic. But the other ones are just a smattering of microphones. I've got 4 or 5 over here that are not on camera simply because I ran out of space. And after you get more than 8 or 9, it becomes visual clutter. I've actually got another 15 or 20 that I've never even bothered to put out here. No room. I, at one point in time, had a credenza in my office that went, I'm guessing, 8 feet across maybe. And at one point in time, I had microphones from one end to the other. And that's pretty cool. I mean, you've got space to put them out in. But yeah, a show about nothing. Dennis Baraboo says, and Seinfeld, I think, is obviously one of the best shows out there. Likewise, The Simpsons. It's kind of funny. I didn't even think of The Simpsons as being a TV show because they're so ingrained in my thought patterns. But if I had to pick a TV show, I'd probably put those 3 at the top, meaning that it would be The Simpsons, Monty Python, and Seinfeld. Seinfeld's first season or 2, last season, not quite, but when they hit their stride, it was unbelievable. And likewise, The Simpsons, first couple seasons, not too amazing. And likewise, in the later seasons, to me, seem really derivative. But X Black Cat X13, the Bobby Isaac is my favorite. I remember seeing that when I was a kid at MIS. Yeah, the Bobby Isaac Daytona got raced at the tail end of 1969 at Talladega, and I believe it showed up at the Texas International Speedway also. And I think he won the race in that car. And then would have shown up at Michigan International Speedway in 1970, along with Daytona, Talladega, and elsewhere. So if you were around back then and got to watch that, congratulations. It'd be a great piece of history to see. 1970. I was aware of cars and racing. I've mentioned before that I have an uncle who passed away about 2 years ago, but he raced in USAC and ARCA in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. And 1 year he actually brought his car down to Daytona and tried qualifying for Daytona and actually bent his car up during practice runs. And he did not have enough money or materials to keep going and actually to drop out before he got a chance to try to qualify. But he won a lot of races at smaller tracks like Toledo and Owasso and, places where these smaller tracks were a big deal back then. Bobby Isaac and those guys, many of them started racing on small tracks. Bobby Isaac raced at Hickory when he was like 19 years old and did very, very well as a young man at small tracks and managed to get up into the big leagues. And my uncle is one of the guys who raced the small tracks and never quite got out of those leagues, but he had a blast doing it. And I remember visiting his house and he had trophies, of all these races he'd won and photographs and ribbons and all kinds of stuff. It was the coolest thing when you were a little kid seeing all that stuff. So that was good times. Tim Corbett, Pan the Room. I've thought of that, but I don't know if you're that familiar with how TV stations work, but a lot of TV studios, I've been on sets of a whole bunch of them, and they'll often have a set and cameras, obviously, and directly behind the cameras, it's often things like, almost like an industrial warehouse, just, racks and ladders and junk. And I got news for you. Right over here is piles of stuff. Now, I do have bookcases here and a lot of stuff is books on the bookcases. But unfortunately, a lot of it is also I just take stuff and I pile it. So unfortunately, like when I get something like the guy who sent me the spinner for making decisions, right? I got to find a place to put that. And so it's, it might displace something else behind me. So it's all a work in progress. Zappa Beeblebrox, Steve has his laundry hampers under the other mics. 90 knots. How long after being symptom-free and positive diagnosis are you considered recovered with recent events in the news? And I have to tell you, I don't know. And I think that's one of the things that's confusing healthcare officials. I've heard them say they're not 100% certain on a lot of this stuff. In other words, how long after exposure could you get it? And then how long after you're, symptom-free are you safe? I don't think they know yet. William Logan, have you been to the Hickory Corners, Michigan Auto Museum? Yes, I have. Hickory Corners is not far from Kalamazoo. And there's a guy there, the Gilmore Museum, founded by a guy named Gilmore, who basically donated his whole car collection and his property to create a museum on the property that used to be where he lived. And there is a proper museum building now, but also just some barns that have been refurbished. It's absolutely beautiful. It's worth the trip. Any place, if you're ever driving across Michigan, when you drive across the bottom of Michigan on I-94, you'll see billboards saying, visit the Gilmore, and it's absolutely worth it. And among other things, they've got a Tucker display there where they've actually got a Tucker automobile, a Tucker engine, a bunch of Tucker paraphernalia. They've got a Stout Scarab there. They used to have a Chrysler Turbine car, but I think that they had to give that back to the Detroit Historical Museum, who owns it. But they've got just unquestionable. It's one of the biggest car collections I've seen. I know there's larger ones, but I'd rank it right up there with like the Peterson in Los Angeles, or the Detroit Henry Ford, and a few others. But the Gilmore at Hickory Corners, absolutely worth a visit, guaranteed. So I've been out there a couple times. I didn't make it out there last year, but I made it out there the year before. So X Block Cat X13. Check out the toy aisle at Meijer or Walmart. They have an awesome yellow Charger monster truck. I'm not. Will I be horrified by that? I like yellow Chargers, but as a monster truck, I guess you can put the body. I've seen it where they put the body of a car on the frame and workings of a monster truck. So I've seen it where it works. It's possible. Johnny Knoxville, a Winston Cup Museum as a wing car in the showroom. Which museum is that? Is that the one in North Carolina? It's been a while since I've been there. I've also been to the museum at the Talladega Raceway, and they got a bunch of cool stuff there too. Yeah, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Yeah, I've been there. It's been a couple of years though, over 10 years. The museum at Talladega has got a bunch of really, really cool stuff there. But one of the interesting things is that the guy who owns Bobby Isaac's car, the car that model's based off of, Tim Wellborn, bought an old car dealership in the town he lives in. And he then turned it into a museum, and he put all his cars in it. So, NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte. That's the one I've been to in Charlotte. Hey, Stephen Bain says new drinking game. Drink every time Steve says Johnny Knoxville. I've only called on him a couple of times recently, but we could also do it with Stephen Baines. That's good Gatorade. There you go. Gary Caswell says, snack legal lawyer, decision maker, law office, desk spinner, paperweight on Amazon. What I'm impressed by, and I keep returning this, is how high quality is it. It's clearly got bearings. It's clearly got roller bearings or something in there because it spins so smoothly that, I mean, this would actually be a time waster. You put this on your desk, you literally just just play with it all day long. JP, or better yet, do a shot every time Steve Leto says, there you go. There you go. And Stephen Baines likes a spinner. Okay. See, JP, if you point it out, I'm going to stop saying it. You know that, right? William Logan, thanks for your live stream. Thank you for checking in. And, you know, I hate to be corny, but it's true. If you guys weren't here talking to me, and by the way, this is a hand motion indicating the live chat, obviously this wouldn't work. I mean, once in a while I do come in this room and talk to myself and make a video, right? But it's a whole different experience coming in and speaking to a live audience. I like it. Lester Blade, did the Finnish candy disappear down your tummy? No, it's here. It's here. I moved it by accident. Sorry. And somebody asked about this the other day. This is Finnish black licorice. And now in America we have black licorice, and I don't like black licorice. I like red licorice. Oh my! Don't even get me going. There's a couple brands of red licorice I absolutely love. And somebody said, "Have you tried the Finnish black licorice?" I'm like, "What's a different?" And they said, "Well, it's Finnish, and Finns have a way of doing things that are a little different." And so a friend of mine gave me a piece, and I tried it. I'm like, "It's kind of strange." And he goes, "Dude, it's an acquired taste. Here, I'll give you a whole bag." So he gave me a whole bag, and you know something? It might be an acquired taste. I haven't acquired it yet. It's salty or something. I don't know. Yeah, Cliff, let me guess. Salty. There you go. I suspect that they've made it out of like smelt or something. They found something weird to make it out of. But it's not licorice. I mean, I've heard people tell me like, "Oh, but it like, you know, it's good if you have a cold or something." Yeah, I don't want my candy to be medicine, okay, or my medicine to be candy. I mean, this, you know, can't just candy be candy and medicine be medicine in this day and age. Pat and PA says it's a well-machined piece of metal. It could be, but there's something about the smoothness of it, and I would have to really investigate this. But the way it feels to me like there are bearings in there. And again, I could be wrong. You know, I got two brothers who are engineers. I'll have to ask them to analyze it for me. Oh boy. Serge B says you can't taste it when you have a cold. Really? Maybe that's why people like it when they have a cold. They can't taste it. Oh boy. Can you spin it closer to the microphone? Yes, I can. I don't know if it'll make a difference or not because, hang on. See, there's a little play in there, but okay. I mean, that spins a long time for something that doesn't have bearings. I mean, come on. I think there's bearings in there. Well, we'll find out. Time to stock up with Werner's Ginger Ale. Betty, you are right. Werner's, for those of you who are not familiar with the Midwest, Werner's originated in Detroit. It's a ginger ale. Old school ginger ale. And growing up in Michigan, it became a home remedy that you would drink ginger ale if you got sick, primarily if you had like the flu or an upset stomach. It was not uncommon that you'd suddenly find yourself eating saltines and drinking ginger ale. And, so I'm not sure how medicinal it actually is, but we do that. Craig Fisher, I'm surprised your brothers talk to you. My uncle is an engineer and he hates lawyers. Why is that? I'm not a products liability lawyer. I can see where, if somebody built products and I sued the companies that built them, maybe, yeah. So Johnny Knoxville's drinking Canada Dry. Oh, in these parts, that'd be treason. So Tim Reuter drinking Verner's Now. There you go, my friend. Wolfram, why'd you get rid of the Deuce? Yeah, I had a 2.5 ton Army truck, and it was one of those things that if I put it in my garage, it took up 2 parking spaces. I'd pull it in diagonally, park across 2 parking spaces. Had to take the roof down, put the window down, do a bunch of windshield down, bunch of stuff. And I had it for a couple of years, and I actually did spend a lot of time goofing off with it, having fun with it. Took it to Woodward Dream Cruise 2 years, took it to the Upper Peninsula twice. And there came a time where I just didn't have enough time to do stuff with it. And it's one of those things that I felt bad for it. And I met a guy who said he wanted to buy it. And he wanted to. I actually, when I owned it, sadly, it had a leaky rear main bearing seal. And it was one of those things where I was aware of it. I watched it. The thing had a monstrous oil reservoir. So it was never in danger. But I always watched it. And the guy told me, because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix that. I'm like, knock yourself out. So he bought it. He fixed it. And he sent me photographs of parades that he put it in. And he had it actually in head parades too. So someday I might get another. I don't know. I'm going to get the Viper first. Different ends of the scale, right? 2-snap M35 A2 Army truck or Viper GT coupe. 6 of one, half dozen the other. John Michael Carmo, is that in your militia days? Yeah, the Michigan militia. We were on the radar for about 3 minutes. Mark Sparks, this maple syrup challenge has not happened yet. I had a viewer promise me one more container of maple syrup, so I'll have an even 5 to do. So when that happens, I will let you know. I'm going to actually do a video dedicated to just the maple syrup taste off. It's not going to be a live feed. It's going to be a full-blown video. I'm going to put a toaster right here. I'll put a camera on the toaster, so I'll have a toaster cam. I'll put the maple syrup in 5 identical things. I'll shuffle them. I'll taste them. I'll rate them, and we'll see how it turns out. There's what it'll be. Taste test. Tim Reuter. Dave H. had a 46 Willis CJ2A, only had 5 numbers in the VIN. That's cool. Old days. William Logan, I really want an M4A3 E8 Sherman. You mean an Army tank? I'm sure you saw the article in the news about the guy who had the Army tank and he parked it in front of his house and the homeowners association got upset. And he said, yeah, take a look at the rules. You guys wrote them. Didn't forbid Army tanks. Do you really want to argue with an attorney who just bought an Army tank? The guy was an attorney. So, John Michael Karma got to go. Have fun going to witness the dystopia. Thank you for however long you were here. I appreciate it. We're going to wrap this up pretty soon too, but we got a few minutes left. Todd J. Riddle. Hey, Steve, what's up? How's life, bud? Things are good, my friend. Thanks for checking in. Aaron B., why are VINs so long? Yeah, modern VINs are 17 digits. Prior to that, I think they're 11. And the VINs now contain a whole bunch of information. The first chunk of the VIN is usually stuff like the manufacturer and then the make and model of the car. In other words, it might. I realize that make and manufacturer are the same in some respects, but not necessarily. You can have Chrysler and Dodge, for instance. But the first chunk identifies the type of car and who made it, and then you get a whole string of numbers at the back, and those are just an indication of the order in which they're being built. But you got to have distinctive numbers to identify a vehicle. And there's so many vehicles out there that it only makes sense the numbers would get longer and longer over time. And there's a lot of other information you can find by popping the hood on a car. They'll often have information about where the car is built, what day it was built, as Johnny Knoxville points out, and so on. Some of that might not be contained in the VIN so much, but contained someplace else on the vehicle. And, I remember a time when they actually predicted in the early 1990s, they said, we might run out of telephone numbers because, everyone's got a phone, and then everyone's going to have a pager, and then everyone's going to have a fax machine, and then with cell phones, so every single person's going to have like 4 different phone numbers. And they didn't realize that, oh, by the way, fax machines, for the most part, gone. Cell phones pretty much collapsed everything else. Does anybody have a pager anymore? I mean, can you even get a pager? I bet they still make them. But, I remember actually in the days of pagers, paging somebody. Good times. Oh. JP says they've run out of TCP/IP internet addresses. Can't they just add more numbers or more digits or something? It's actually above the realm of my knowledge. Johnny Knoxville, engine size and type. Yeah, it's not uncommon that they'll have that in the VIN. That's one of the things you can do with respect to very quickly identifying what type of car you have if you're looking at an old classic car to make sure it's not a clone. So, for instance, a Dodge Charger Daytona, the way you can tell that it's not a Charger that's been cloned into a Daytona is the VIN identifies the shape of the back window. If it's a fast back window. The problem is the Charger 500 and the Daytona were the same VIN identifier. They did not have a specific identifier to say whether it was a 500 or a Daytona. There's ways you can figure that out elsewise, but it's one of those oddities. So I know, for instance, like a Pontiac Firebird, hopped up on trim would be a Trans Am in the old days. And I think you could tell that by the VIN. But then the next question, of course, is if the VIN shows that it came with a particular engine, is that the correct engine or has the engine been replaced? And that's another problem. And so, some depends on the make and model and so on. Some vehicles will actually have parts of the VIN stamped on the engine block and sometimes in transmission housing, things like that. And so you can often find out if the engine and the transmission are original to the car as well. I've heard horror stories about guys who buy vehicles and they go to check the VIN on the engine block and it's a poor stamping. And the problem with it is that if the stamping was clearer and they could prove it was the correct engine, the car would be worth 2 or 3 times as much than if it had a quote unquote unknown engine. And, I put a video up a couple of years ago where I got to go for a ride in my neighbor's Hemi Cuda. And my neighbor is an older guy, lived near me, and he had a Hemi Cuda. And I think it was 1970, hardtop. And he said, hey, one day when I pull it out of the garage or barn, I'll swing by and pick you up. I grabbed a camera and I filmed it. Back in the early days, I didn't have a stabilizer or anything on the GoPro. And then he let me drive it. And he'd installed one of those. It's an automatic transmission, but with a bang shifter through it. Like that. Like you have to manually shift the gears. And he was the second owner of the car, and he even knew what dealership it came from. He knew the first owner, and the problem is that when he got the car, the first owner had blown up the engine under warranty, and just thought, and he brought it to the dealership. And they go, swap the engine out. And back then, it didn't matter. Now it matters, And so if you could find that blown Hemi someplace, you could, fix it, drop it in that man's, Cuda, and, quadruple the value of it. It's crazy how that works. So, Patrick Dwyer, the VIN on my 1964 Avanti is 64R5218, which is what, 2, 4, 6, 7 digits? Nico Pessola, I wonder if the paint code is in my VIN. I'm not sure. And that's like, I can tell you that in a lot of old Chryslers and Mopars in the 1960s, they had a fender tag, and there'd be a metal tag that would be riveted to the inside of the fender. You pop the hood, and it's either right here on the fender, or I think sometimes it'd be on the radiator brace. I could be wrong about that. But the fender tag, this whole website's devoted to decoding the fender tags, and it'll tell you everything about the vehicle, all the options, what color the paint is, whether or not it's undercoated, whether or not it's got, it's a particular fabric on the seats, and all of the wacky things like, it has a radio, but AM only, or it's got the antenna here, or it's got the rack here, or whatever. Every single thing that could be done on an assembly line that was different from car to car, meaning that, it doesn't have to say what type of car it is, because that's, the assembly line is only building chargers, for instance. But does the vehicle get a particular type of wheels? Well, that's in the fender tag. What color is the paint? Fender tag. Does it have a vinyl top? Fender tag, that kind of thing, if that's an option. And so it's a fascinating idea. And there's guys who've got websites devoted to decoding this stuff. Absolutely fascinating. The internet's a great place. So there you go. Some cars with a paint code in the trunk, Johnny Knoxville. Yeah, and I'm going to end on this note. If you ever want to find out the VIN on some old Mopars, it's not just on the VIN tags underneath the windshield. It's quite often stamped someplace else. Like it might be stamped on the firewall or stamped on one of the fender braces. And believe it or not, on old Mopars, you could often pop the deck lid or the trunk and pry the weather stripping back, and the VIN would be stamped into the lip of the metal right there. And if you didn't know it was there, you'd never know it was there. You'd never find it on your own. So there you go. But I am going to end now. We've been online for a little over an hour and a half. I appreciate it, guys. I'll try to do these every couple of days. Stay tuned. I appreciate everyone. And if you got a shelter in place, do that. If you got to just lay low, do that as well. But I appreciate all the company, and maybe we can all get this together. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.